All right, again, hi everyone. This time we're going to be looking at the lab section of our class. I'm just going to be showing you quickly how to find the lab section and a little bit about how to navigate and what to expect from the lab portion of our class. This is going to be a relatively short video. So it's still within Blackboard. It's just going to be found near the bottom. So when you get to our class, and again, this is going to be unlocked after you take that Respondus practice test. So you won't see it until you've done that. But just scroll down and here, and most of this you won't see. So just click this online lab and it will expand, and welcome to online lab. Click that and it'll expand. Online lab overview is just a document that tells you a little bit about it. The lab manual we will look at in just a moment, but that's going to be your key source for everything lab in paper form. Class materials, additional help. This is a link that takes you to a part of Pearson that has models and slides to look at. This is a great study tool. I recommend going here often for the labeling things that you'll need to learn from lab. This is the points breakdown for how lab will be graded. Everything's going to come down to lab practical exams and lab exercises. Here's our lab calendar, which is also in our course syllabus that we looked at earlier and we will look at again here in just a moment. But the video that you're watching right now is right here. It will also be sent to your email, so that might be how you're watching it. But let's pull up our syllabus that we were just looking at a moment ago. This is right after our lecture calendar in the syllabus. Here's our lab calendar in the syllabus that shows everything that we're going to be doing week by week. The first 2 days, just getting yourself acquainted, watching this video, making sure you can find everything for lab. And then for the rest of the semester, each lab, either activity, exercise, or practical will run for 2 days. So the first 2 days, the introduction, then Wednesday and Thursday will be lab exercise 1, Friday and Saturday will be lab exercise 2, Sunday you'll have off, and then Monday, Tuesday will be lab exercise 3, Wednesday, Thursday will be the first lab practical, and on the rest of the semester. I'll close this. And open the manual. So the lab manual is going to be your primary source for all of your lab exercises. I'll show you some other things that we will be doing also in just a moment. But so your lab manual, it's a very large document. You'll want to download it to your computer so that you can access it regularly. There's some introductory material at the start that just tells you things like your learning objectives, introductory information, lab exercise instructions, and tips. These will be found at the start of every lab exercise that we do. Every lab exercise that we do is going to be broken down into some basic sections. Histology, where we study tissue and cells. Anatomy, some bigger structures that we'll be studying. Physiology, where we study how those structures work. And case studies, where we apply what we learned. Disclaimer, the manual is for educational purposes only. Acknowledgement, where we just talk about where the information came from. And then our contents. We have 10 exercises and then 3 appendices. We will each 2 days, we will be doing 1 lab exercise. Here's our preface where we just talk about how to get up and running. And like I said, we'll be starting in a couple of days with our first lab exercise. So it's a good idea to look ahead. Lab exercise 1 is just an introduction to anatomy and physiology and microscopy. In many instances, what we're going to be doing in the lab is going to overlap what we're doing in the lecture. So the lab exercise does not necessarily line up with the chapter. A lot of students think lab exercise 1 lines up with chapter 1, lab exercise 2 lines up with chapter 2. That's not the case. In some instances, it does match up, but that's not intentionally so. It just happens to work out that way. But in lab exercise 1, a lot of what we're doing does come from chapter 1. So the first few lectures will go hand in hand with some of what we do in this first lab exercise. So kind of work together in the lecture and lab part of the course here. I'm not going to go through a lot of this. I'm just going to scroll through so that you can see what this lab exercise looks like, because there will be a separate lab video for lab exercise 1. But here's our learning objectives. This is everything that you should be able to do when we get finished with this lab. Here, like I said, the different portions of the lab. Some background to give you an idea of why we do this lab, what came before, why it's important. Microscopy. Many students, as a matter of fact, most students, when they get to our class, have never used a microscope. And it's kind of unfortunate when that's the case, especially if you're taking this class online. We try to give you as much of a virtual experience as possible using the microscope, but if at all possible, try to get to one of our campuses during an open lab time and use a microscope, especially if you are going into a program where you're going to have to take microbiology as a class. You do not want to arrive to microbiology having never touched a microscope. Please, please try to get your hands on a microscope before you get to that class, if at all possible. This is introducing you to a microscope. We do our best in an online format, but we do have microscopes for students to use in our open labs. Little bit of information on microscopes, which we'll talk about in our Lab 1 video when we get there. Here's some information that does come up in our textbook, which does come up in lecture. Some of the ways that we divide the body so that we could talk about regions and portions of the body, because the body is a very big thing. It's difficult to talk about the body as a whole. It's much easier to talk about specific portions of the body. And then here, back to the microscope, where we talk about the different parts of the microscope, what the parts of the microscope do. And then that's the end of that lab exercise. But as you go through the lab, you'll see that there are links. And some of these links each week or each couple of days when we're doing these labs, you'll see that sometimes there's videos to watch, as we see right here. Or sometimes there are activities to do. Some of the labs actually have activities that you have to go through to click. Here's some study material, for example. Some of our labs will have activities that you have to do, and you get data back as you do the activities. And what we will see next week when we do the lab exercise 1, here is an overview. This is where I will post the video. There's going to be a video posted right here that goes through lab 1, and there's going to be a worksheet. As you do the worksheet, there's going to be some things for you to complete. Each week, some of the labs will be a little bit more extensive. Some of them will have activities that you have to actually perform virtually and upload certain things along with your worksheet. So some of the labs will have things that come from your manual that you have to do. So make sure to always, don't just do the lab that you are working on at the time. Always look ahead so that you aren't struggling, an hour or two before it's due and realizing, oh, there were some activities that I need to do, I'm not going to have time to get those done. Now, since we do move so quickly, lab practical exams are always right around the corner. When the lab practical exams are active, they will be found in this folder right here. And I will always have these lab exercises. They will open at 12:01 on one day and close at 11:59 the next day. So they will be open for 48 hours each, and same with the lab practical exams. All right, so remember there is a lecture portion and a lab portion for this course. Don't get bogged down doing just one of those. You do have to keep up with both of those. It's one class, but think of it as two and keep up with both portions. All right, like I said in the other video, please reach out often. Ask those questions. Don't think that just because it's an online class that you can't ask questions. I give my cell phone number there for you to text for a reason. I want you to ask questions. I want you to be comfortable reaching out. I want to be a teacher just like in an on-campus class that you can ask those questions anytime. All right, take care, have a great semester, and I hope to hear from you soon.